Hello YouTube, this is the NES that I just picked up. In the previous version, part 1 of this series, I went over the box of stuff that I just picked up, so I won't go too much more into it. But as we recall, the issue that I'm experiencing with this Nintendo is every game I put in and try and power it on, I just get a blinking red light. Now, that is a fairly common issue with these, and most of the time, I want to say 90-95% of the time, it's just due to dirty pin connectors or loose pin connectors. So they're just not getting a firm grip on the cartridges themselves. So I'm going to show you how to take one of these apart, how to clean it out, how to really check and see what the issue is. So all you need to open one of these is just a normal crosshead or Phillips head screwdriver. Use a number 2 size, so not the smallest, not the largest. I recommend one that is just a one piece. It doesn't have detachable bits, and the reason for that is some of these holes, specifically this one right here, is difficult to get into if you don't have a fairly small tip on your screwdriver. So just get a basic, I don't know, you can probably buy these, they come in a kit. Most kits, you can probably buy them for under $5. Just get a basic Phillips screwdriver for this. The newer Nintendos use specific security bits, but they didn't use that here in these. So there are 6 K-screws. These you don't have to take off in order to actually open the console, but I'm going to take them off to clean it. And that's actually a little cover that covers over the controller ports. So it will be coming off. I'm going to give this whole thing a good wash and really get it back up to original condition. So when I do this type of thing, I like to make sure that I have a towel on the underneath my working surface. And the reason for that is when I do this, flip it over, try and get the K-screws out, they don't go bouncing all over. So there are 6 screws. Make sure that they're all accounted for. I'm doing this on a fairly hard surface, so if the 6 screws just started bouncing everywhere, I would probably lose some. There's 3 more. Perfect. So we open the top, and this is what we've got here. So it's not too bad. It's a little dusty. There's not really any rust on this RF shielding, which is nice. Now, all of these screws here are also Phillips screws, and you can use the same screwdriver to remove them. So what we're going to do is take off this RF shielding and gain access to the pin connectors. So on these consoles, most screws are the same. And in the case of the Nintendo, I think they're actually the same as... I'm going to switch screwdrivers here. The reason for that is this is a magnetic screwdriver, so it makes it easy to account for all the screws here if I happen to drop something. So these screws and the case screws are actually the same. Yeah, they look the same to me. Same size, same number of threads. So it ultimately doesn't matter if you mix these up because they will all go back the same anyways. There are 2 screws in this which are different, and I'll show you very shortly which they are, but they're just a little bit longer, and they're used to hold down the pin connector on through the board onto the casing. So I'll show you that very shortly.
One more.
Now, if the RF shielding is in bad shape, it's rusty, it's got marks on it, whatever the case may be, you can clean it. You can wash it with soap and water. Just make sure you're giving it a really good dry, because it is just basically sheet metal. So it is prone to rusting if you do happen to get water on it and leave it there for an extended period of time. I'm not really going to worry about it. It seems to be really in excellent shape. If there is rust, you can also use a bit of steel wool to try and grind that off. So we've uncovered the circuit board and the pin connectors. So these silver screws are the ones I was telling you about, which are a little bit different. So when you're unscrewing this for the first time, what I always suggest doing is taking a picture. By taking a picture of the board, you can see if there's different color screws where they belong. In the case of the NES, there's only two, and it's these silver ones. In the case of a Super Nintendo, there's four, and you want to make sure that they're going back in the right spot because they're a little bit longer. In the case of the Nintendo 64, there's a whole bunch of different types of screws, so it is important that you take pictures and maybe even map out exactly where the screws that you take out came from, because you're going to want them to go back in the same spots. So there are 6 screws which hold down this little mechanism that you use to push the games in and out. So we'll take them out. As I mentioned, all the other screws except for those 2 silver ones are all the same size, so it really doesn't matter where you end up putting them back as long as they go back in. And there are 2 screws on the AV out and the RF, so you want to make sure that you get those off as well. Okay, so we've got all the screws removed. So this part here will actually just slide right off the board. If it's dirty, you can clean it. This actually appears to be in very good shape. It's not dusty, there's no pop or anything in it, so I'm just going to set that aside. I'm not even going to worry about it. This is the circuit board now. Now be careful when you're taking this out, because there are a few connectors which hook up to the control ports, as well as this little board here, which is your power switch. So when you flip it over to the side, you can unplug these right here. So what I do, grab it and firmly, not too firmly, but try and pull out with even pressure, so that way you're not damaging anything here. So, and there we have the circuit board. So there's RF shielding on the bottom. Take that off as well. And we have a view of the actual board itself. So as I mentioned, the nice thing about these old boards is there's usually not very much that goes wrong with them. The chips are all, I think they're all through board soldering. So if you ever have an issue with one of these chips, it's usually very easy to reflow these solder points to make it work properly again. The chips don't often go bad themselves, but you can run into issues with poor solder joints. So with these, at least, it's an easy fix. Super Nintendos and newer, they use surface mount soldering techniques, so it is much more difficult to repair. Now the pin connector is what I was telling you about, is probably the issue, and I'm just trying to get a little bit of a view on it. It doesn't look too bad, so we're going to take it off though, and to get this off, you just slide it. Make sure you're giving a fairly even pressure, and there we go. So I'm going to try and get a good view inside the connector, and it looks to be, I mean, it looks okay. I don't really see any rust, but we're going to give it a bit of a cleanup anyways. So there's a few ways to go about doing this. You can use alcohol, you can use a toothbrush. Some people suggest actually boiling this whole thing, and I've done that before myself, and it seems to work not too bad. I'm going to try it first with just some alcohol and a toothbrush. So we'll give that a shot, see if we get any action from this. So I'm going to get that all set up and I'll come back in a minute. Okay, so I'm going to try and give this pin connector a bit of a clean. So to do that, I use 99% isopropyl alcohol. You can buy this at probably any drugstore, Walmart, anything like that for under $5 for a bottle this size. Also use my handy trusty toothbrush, and of course you need the pin connector. So there are two sides of this. This part here where the wings kind of come off is the part that attaches to the board. Usually this is not the issue. I'm going to give it a bit of a touch up here anyways, but usually the problem comes up here, and if you hold it vertically, it's the longer side. So all I'm going to do here is just get the toothbrush in here with some alcohol and give it a hard scrub. The idea being here is to just get rid of dust and other little debris that might have gotten in here over the course of over 30 years now since this came out, and really get that working properly. Most of these that you pick up used or not working have probably never been opened before, so no one would have ever really given this a clean. Fortunately, it looks clean, and by that I mean there's no like coke or anything in it, there's no foreign objects in there, there's not much hair and dust and other stuff like that that's really visible, so it might be some slight oxidization that's causing it not to connect to games. So we'll give that a clean, and I'm just going to blow on it very lightly. I don't want to blow on it like you're used to blowing into your cartridges, but just to get some airflow so it dries. It's a nice thing about isopropyl alcohol is that it dries very quickly. It's probably almost dry already. So again, I'm going to wave it over the air, let any little droplets come out, and we'll connect it very shortly. Okay, so the alcohol is dry. I've put the connector, just put it in place on the board here. I'm actually going to install the little spring mechanism as well. And it just slides underneath the connector and sits in place. Normally you would screw it in, but just because we're only testing it right now, I'm not going to do that. So I have my Super Mario Duck Hunt. We will put it in, and fingers crossed, let's see what we get. Just make sure you're giving it good connection. Pop it into place, and still a blinking light. So that connector I'm going to give a little bit more work, try and see if we can get something else to happen. Just going to try kind of playing with it a little bit here. No. Okay, so we're going to have to do a little bit more work to that. Next step, what I'm going to do is actually use some very, very fine sandpaper. So by that I mean 1500 grit sandpaper. You can buy this at a paint store. You may be able to get it at Home Depot as well, but really what it is automotive sandpaper. It's used for buffing paint that you would have freshly applied, knocking down clear coat, that type of thing. This takes a very tiny amount off those pins. I absolutely would not use something like 400 grit sandpaper or anything like that. All you're going to do is gouge up those pins and make the connection even worse. But the idea with this is if there's any gunk or anything really built up on those pins, hopefully we can knock it off. So I'm going to let you guys go here. I'm going to get that set up and I'll show you what I'm doing. Okay, so what I've done here, you get yourself a card of some type. In this case, it's just a gift card. And wrap the sandpaper. So as again I mentioned, I have 1500 grit sandpaper. I also have 2500, which I might switch to as well, but I'm going to start with the 1500. You wrap just the end around it like that, and then all you will do, grab the card, or the pin connector, and we're going to put it in and pull it out, in and out, in and out. So the idea with that is get some of the gunk and stuff. You can kind of see little marks here where those pins are. Any oxidization, any dust, any built up stuff that maybe I didn't see is going to come right off. You don't want to do this too much. You don't want to actually sand down the pins, but you want to get just the stuff and the gunk and everything off it. So after I've done that, I'm going to hit it again with a bit of alcohol on my toothbrush. So this time I just dunked it in alcohol. I'm going to dry it a little bit on the towel here so it's not super wet. I don't really want to get it wet. I just want to pick up any residue that might be still sitting in there. So that's clean. I'm going to hook it back up to the system. So I'm going to actually show you what I do this time. When you grab the board, you see this expansion port here. That goes on the bottom of the system. So flip it over, and the end with the little wings, you're going to just firmly push it right into place, just like that. So now it's sitting in place here. I like to put the bottom RF shielding back in place, and that's the one. It has a little hole for that expansion slot. So you line up the expansion slot with it, just like that. That way it sits flush and even, and it has the support it needs. Lastly, you need to hook up this blue connector to the bottom here. That blue connector is what controls the power switch. So without it, you're never going to be able to turn the system on and off. The controller ports I don't think are really required. There's nothing that checks to make sure that those are connected. We put in the little spring mechanism here. That's just not sitting properly. There we go. So it should sit pretty flush here on its supports. I'm going to put the game in and plug in the system, plug in the AVs. So again, I have green and the yellow, black and the red. Push the game down and fingers crossed. So, it's not blinking, but it's not giving me any video because my TV's turned off because I haven't used it for long enough. So let's try that again. I also have to make sure that I have the proper input selected. So this is number 6. This is my bigger TV. So I bought one of these on eBay. Cost about $10, and it's a lifesaver when it comes to hooking up all types of different systems. Alright, so let's try that again. Power on. And we have Super Mario Duck Hunt. I'm going to grab a controller, make sure that everything seems to be working properly, but it looks like we've repaired this. Alright, so I've hooked up the connector here for controller port number 1. I didn't bother with controller port number 2, but as long as I get response from the controllers, I'm happy. So let's turn the system on. There we go. And so this is the controller that I got with the system. So there is something rattling inside. So we're going to have to open that up and find out what the issue is. Hopefully it works. So we have sound. We have response. Sorry, I'm just playing one-handed, so not surprising that I did that. But it looks like we are good to go. Oops. Alright, but takeaway from that is we have a fully functional Nintendo. What I'm going to do now is clean the console. So as you can see, there's all sorts of dust. It looks like they spilled something in it, which has started, it's just dirty. It's not in bad shape. It doesn't look like it's yellowed much at all. maybe a tiny bit when you compare the outside to the inside, but nothing that I'm really worried about. I'm going to clean that up, get it looking nice, reassemble it all, and this one's going up for sale soon. The used game, like the retro game market, has really shot up in recent years. You could probably sell something like this. This is in Canada, mind you. Might be a bit less in the United States or across the sea, but you could sell something like this in good condition with a controller, a light gun, Super Mario Brothers, and Duck Hunt for about $140. People are willing to pay that. Can you get it for less? Absolutely. But if someone wants to get it for less, they can go elsewhere and they can get it for less. So I'm going to show you how we're going to actually clean this system in a bit, but this is very encouraging. So to sum up, I've traded my PlayStation 2 for a fully functional Nintendo and a fully functional Super Nintendo. So this was a good deal in my opinion. Okay, so I have all the parts off. There are two little black plastic corners that came off. There were two little metal brackets. Now these aren't going to be washed, there's no need to. The flap comes off, and otherwise this is what it looks like with all the little pieces removed. So I'm just going to flip that over, throw all the stuff in there, and we're going to take this upstairs to the kitchen, fill up the sink with hot water and soap, and just let it soak for a bit. I'm going to get all the dust and stuff out of here. We're going to clean up the outside of it and really get this in top-notch shape for resale. Okay, so I've had the casing for the Nintendo soaking for about half an hour now. All I do is really hot water, some dish soap, and just let it soak, let it penetrate into the dirt and the dust and everything, and scrub it out afterwards. This is the bottom of it, so I actually didn't soak this for a couple of reasons. Firstly, it's really not dirty. It doesn't need a thorough cleaning. I cleaned out the inside. It's still drying right now, but I got all the dust and grime and stuff out. Also, the reason that I didn't soak it is because of these stickers right here. So these, they feel like they're just paper stickers, and they're generally fairly durable, but I don't want to soak it and ruin the stickers here. They're in really good shape. This one's pretty good shape, so I didn't want to adversely affect those. So all I did was I rinsed out the inside well. I hit that Mattel sticker that was right there with some hot water. It pretty much came right off. There's a little bit of adhesive residue left. I'm going to see if I can get that up with just simple alcohol a little bit later. But, I mean, this bottom is perfectly fine. The rest of it here, what I'm going to do is use a washcloth, get that nice and soapy, and then just really give it a thorough cleaning. Anything like this right here where there's a grill, I'm going to use my toothbrush to get right in there. I'm going to try and clean it all up very well. And in the process, really try my best not to drop my phone in this. That would suck. So it seems to be cleaning up quite nicely. There are a couple dirtier spots that will need a bit more scrubbing, but I mean, that's coming up quite well. Anywhere that there's a crevice or corner like this, I like to hit it with the toothbrush to just make sure that there's no grime and everything in there. So I'm going to do that for a little bit. The inside looks pretty good. There used to be a little spot around here that seems to have just come right off in the water. I didn't even need to scrub it or anything. So I'm going to give this a clean up. I'm going to clean everything else up, let it dry. Very important to let this stuff dry for an hour, 2 hours, whatever it takes so that it's bone dry. You don't want it wet and reassemble it and having water drip on the board, because you could short something out and actually damage the console. So I'm going to finish this up. I don't think you really need to wash it, so I'll hit you up when I'm ready to reassemble everything. Okay, so I've let my NES cover dry completely. I let it dry overnight, and here I am the next day, and I'm ready to reassemble everything. So what I'm going to start with is the little power switch assembly and the controller ports. Before the board or anything goes in, these need to be dealt with. So we have the buttons, we have the power, and the reset button, and they just simply pop right into place on this. Reset, power, make sure that the words are facing the proper way. The top of this, so the blue switches and the LEDs should be visible from the top of the console. And all you do, you line it up with where the buttons should go, and it will sit into place like that. So we have two different types of small silver screws, and I'm going to show these right here. So see if I can get a focus on that. Not really. There we go. So as you can see, one of them has a flatter top and one of them is more rounded or domed. We're going to use the ones that are rounded at the top here for this. So grab your screwdriver. See if we can focus back. There we go. Grab your screwdriver, and one screw will go in right here on one side, and the other screw is going to go in on the other side of this assembly right underneath where the ribbon is, right in that hole there. Now, what we're going to do is the power ports, or the controller ports. So if you remember, I mentioned before, they have two different cable lengths. The short one is going to be controller port number 1, and the longer one is going to be controller port number 2. So you put these in from the outside, let them sit into place like that. Then we have the cover. So this is the cover for the outside, and all it does, it fits right over top here. The two little tips go right behind the casing, and then it sits into place like this. Now, to screw it in, we're going to use those flatter silver screws, and they're just going to go right in the bottom here. So it's important to note when you're screwing any of these screws into plastic, if you feel that it's taking a lot of effort to screw them in, stop. Back those screws out and try it again. Odds are good that if you're really fighting with it, all you're doing is stripping the plastic inside, and it will get a loose screw fit. Okay, so that is ready for the board to go in. So I'm going to grab the board and we'll get that taken care of next. Alright, so we're ready to install the circuit board back in. So this is the board. I've already slid the pin connector in place. That was there since we did testing. You're also going to need the bottom RF shielding, and that's the one that has this hole for the expansion port on the board. So all you do before you put the board in is kind of line up the hole and put the shielding into place, so it will just sit like that. Make sure these screw holes at the bottom more or less line up. It will move a little bit though. And you're actually going to put it sideways right here for this step. So controller port number 2, it's the longer one, and it connects to the side right there. Controller port number 1 connects right there. And then the power cable, if you notice the pins here, one of them has a bit more of a space between them at the end. Same with the connectors, so that's an easy way to make sure that you're putting it in properly. Now, you just flip over the board here, try and align these wires so that it's not going to get in the way of anything, and then let it sit into place. So there are a couple little, make sure these holes line up, and there are a couple little points in here that will actually sit up into the board. So everything's more or less in place, I think. Yep, that looks good. So it's in place now, and we're almost ready to start screwing the other bits in. First, I'm going to put the spring mechanism in place as well. So all this does is it slides right underneath the pin connector, and before you just leave it there and start screwing, there is a little bit of a catch on the bottom right here, and that has to actually go underneath the circuit board. So you put this into place, and sometimes you may need to kind of pick up the board a little bit just to get it to line up where you want it, right like that. So now everything seems to be pretty sturdy. We're going to start installing the screws. So what I like to do when it comes to installing the screws in the NES is get those silver screws out of the way. If you remember, there were long silver screws, and they go in right there. So the second set of holes from the back of where the pin connector is. So I put those in first because once those are in, it doesn't matter what screw goes where. All the remaining case screws are the same size. You can put them in any spot. You just have to make sure that they're all in there. So now we take the rest of the screws and just start installing them. I'm not going to record all of this, but I'll come back once they're all in place. Okay, so I've installed the 6 screws on this spring mechanism right here. 4, 5, 6. I don't install any additional screws until we put on the top RF shielding. So this sits over top, and make sure that it looks like it lines up properly. So there's a couple small holes right there, there, and there, and there's going to be a little piece of plastic that's going to poke through it, and the purpose of that is just to make sure that it's aligned properly. Now we take some of the remaining screws and just start screwing in the RF shielding. So when you're doing this, also don't forget to make sure that you're screwing in the 2 screws on this AV unit. So there's one right here and one right here. So again, I'm not going to record me and screwing them all in, but I'll come back once it's ready to go. Okay, so I've installed all the remaining screws in the shielding here. It's important when you do this that you count the leftover screws. You should have 6 remaining screws here, which I do, and those are for screwing the top into the case. We haven't put together the top half yet, so you should also have those tiny screws and the clips that came in that, but we'll get to that later. Right now, before I get the top ready to go, what I want to do is test this, make sure everything works properly. So I put in Super Mario Brothers 3. That was the one that the pins on my particular copy seem to be a little bit thinner, so it has a harder time connecting. So I want to make sure that it works properly. So we turn the power on, and it looks like we are good. So far so good. Let's try it again with another game. So we'll turn this off, take this out, and time for Super Mario Brothers Duck Hunt. So again, power. We have Super Mario Brothers Duck Hunt. So it looks like we've effectively fixed this console. Let's get the top ready to go, and I'll show you how to do that very shortly. Okay, so we've moved on to the part now where we have to reassemble the top half of the case. And that's not very difficult, just we need a new screwdriver. So again, I'm going to use my precision slot head screw. So they are very small screws. You do need a very small screwdriver. So I'm going to start with just the cover. So what we'll do, flip it over, sit the cover in place right there. First end goes inside the console. Second part will sit right in place. And then we're going to take one of the 2 black corner pieces that we have and use that to cover that up. It really doesn't matter which one you use, as they both are identical. What I prefer to do is take whatever looks the best, because this is going to be the front of your console. So if there's scratches on one of them, I'm going to put that on the back side. So I think this one looks a little bit better. So that's going to be my piece to use here. So we flip it over, and you'll notice there are 3 screw holes. 1, 2, 3. I'm going to do these 2 first, just to pin it into place. Do not do this one right away, because you have a metal clip that you have to install there. So I'm going to start with my first screw. Now these are, like I said, very small, so it's easier, I find, to just get them in with your fingers and then screw them into place. So that one's in. And I find it's still easier to hold the screw and the tip in place with the bottom one. Because they are slotted screws, it's very easy for your screwdriver to slip off the screw if you're just trying to hold it with one hand. So it'll save yourself a little bit of trouble. Now, for this one here, you're going to use one of these little clips and put it in place first. There's a cut corner on one of them, so you're not going to be able to put it in backwards or upside down or anything. It just won't fit properly. Use one of these screws here, put that into place, and then screw that in. And again, if you're having a hard time screwing it in, just stop, back it out, and try it again. You don't want to strip these holes, especially with how small these screws are. And again, don't overdo it. So you don't have to go super tight. It doesn't take a lot to hold it into place. Just get it fairly tight so it's not going to move. Now we're going to do this clip right here. Now this one, you have a little bit less space to work with, so if you've got big fingers, you may find it kind of clumsy getting in there. And screw that guy in. Now we're going to do the same thing on this corner right here. So we take the last plastic piece, stick it into place there, and this time there's only 2 screw holes, one right there and one right there. So the third one, you don't screw anything into that. Okay, so that's done. Cover opens up properly. If you experience any like real resistance or it doesn't close properly, it could be because you've screwed it too tight. I actually bought a replacement cover once, and it was clearly not an original. It was a replica, and the little ends were too thick, so it would never really sit fully shut. So I had to actually file that down in order to work. So now, you line up the top of the console, get it into place, flip it over, and you have 6 screws to put in. So again, I use my narrow screwdriver, so it's not one of those detachable tip ones. It will fit in those holes quite nicely. What I do, drop the 6 screws in and screw them in. Once those are in, you are done. So your console is clean, it works, it's ready to go. Whether you're going to use that yourself, you want to sell it, whatever your intention is. But we've made a pretty good looking Nintendo. I'm just going to put the 3 in right now, and then I'll flip it over and show you how it looks all cleaned up and ready to go. Okay, so that's what we've got. It's in excellent shape. The cartridge reader works very well. The controller ports are all installed. Everything's fairly clean. The labels are in good shape. There's no huge scratches and scuffs. There's going to be little ones, but I mean, it's 30 years old. That's to be expected. So there you have it. That's how to clean and how to repair probably 90% of the original NES systems that you're going to come across. Thanks a lot for watching this video. I hope that it can be helpful to anyone trying to restore their old Nintendo that they've had for years, or if you happen to pick one up that's just not working properly. Like I mentioned, most of those, that's all you need to do with them. They're very difficult to break. They just need cleaning. In some cases, those pin connectors actually need to be replaced, and you can buy them online on eBay. One of our pawn shops in town actually does supply them as well, and they cost about $25-30. So that's an inexpensive way to go about repairing that as well. If you liked the video, please be sure to like it, subscribe to my channel, and as I upload more videos, I hope that they can be helpful to everyone here. Thanks a lot for watching again.